Hey there, I'd like to talk to some of the young men, all of the young men out there that growing up in this environment that we have right now, a very difficult world, seems to be getting more complicated by the day. I think there are a number of things that I have gone through that I'd love to share with you. Hopefully it helps in the experiences that you're having. I remember growing up, and one of the difficult parts of growing up was being bullied. And if you're not in this situation, haven't been bullied, then I think you're very lucky, but your time is coming. Um, and in order to use kind of an analogy, I'd like to show you a short clip of how the swords in the movie The Lord of the Rings were made. The guy that helped make these medieval swords was a guy by the name of Peter Lyon. He's a world-class medieval sword maker, a British guy, and he talks about making the sword called Sting. That was the one that was used by Frodo. And he talks about the process of hardening that steel, what it took, the extreme differences between the temperatures it was exposed to, and how it was heated up and then rapidly cooled, and what effect that had on that steel. Let's see if we can just
To make it easier. One of the swords that uses a wide range of these techniques is Sting. Normally the process will start with a conversation with the designers. I start by marking the blade on a bar of spring steel. I cut out the tang to make a handle. Here the blade shape is being cut out and refined on a linisher. Sting is unusual as the blade is heat treated before the main grinding begins. The red hot blade is quenched in oil to harden it. Once I've cleaned off the dark scaling,
So if you notice there, very interesting process. He started out just kind of with a block of steel, and then as the process went on, he talked about hardening that steel. He heated it up to very high temperature, so it was glowing red. And then right after that, he dipped it into um, just some room temperature oil to rapidly cool it. That process made the steel much more hardened. And it was, if that's not done, then that sharp edge won't be held. It'll be easily dulled, which I think is very interesting. And are there some things that happen to us in our lives? Do you feel like your life's on fire? It's been torched. You feel like it's being burned up or turned into ashes? Is there a purpose? Are you living the best you know how? And still these things are happening. You're innocent of some of these things, these punishments that are being given. Maybe you're being sharpened. Maybe you're being molded. Maybe you're being shaped for something better. Maybe this molding and shaping is being done by other people and their actions through bullying. Uh, you know, who knows the greater vision? There's one that knows, and there's a purpose to everything. Who are these bullies? What's their purpose? Usually, it's someone that's hurting, someone that wants you to feel the same pain that they've felt or feeling, and in the pain that they're suffering, their best way they know how to deal with it is to make you feel that same way. Um, and this is not something that's just happening in schools. It's happening everywhere. It happens in schools and churches, workplaces, and the government. There's a lot of places where people are doing these types of things because of how they feel in their own lives. I recognize there's many different types of bullying and levels, but here I'm just going to talk specifically about one type, physical or verbal abuse or bullying from other students in schools. And I think on kind of a first level, you know, someone can verbally abuse you by saying you know, name calling. I've got a son actually that's redheaded, and so I imagine you can tell, he comes home, he's called Ginger and all kinds of things, and for some reason he doesn't like it. He gets very upset. I remember one time I was in the restroom. I was probably ninth or 10th grade, and I was in the restroom combing my hair, making it look all pretty and nice. And someone came in and said something like, "Well, that didn't help any." And like, whatever, dude. So, I mean, just very minor, but still, it still has an effect. I still remember it, but not very severe. A level two might be someone's being physically violent, punching, destroying property, destroying your stuff, ripping up books, that kind of stuff. That happens occasionally. Level three might be, somebody that's repeatedly, like on a daily basis, doing violent things against you, physical harm to you, much greater level. Maybe even a level four, you've got a group of people or a gang that you're not part of, that's going after you. It can be, life threatening. So based on these different levels, your response to what's going on should also increase what you're doing. Basically it starts with praying for relief and from direction from what you should do, talking to parents, talking to teachers, talking um, about homeschooling. Uh, a great thing to do is start building yourself up physically, working out, taking self-defense classes. There's nothing wrong with defending yourself against physical harm. You know, Level one or two response, just to give you an example, I remember years ago, this is probably more like junior high years ago. Um, I remember a kid that was, it wasn't just me, and it was somewhat physical, pushing you up against the lockers, pushing you at the wall in the gym class, and asserting his authority over three or four of us that he liked to pick on. Um, so it was a little more than just name calling, and it had a big impact on me. I didn't know what to do. I remember it had gone on for a long time. I'd spent weeks, probably months, thinking about it, kind of praying about what I should do. I didn't really talk to my parents about it. That would have been a good option. But I remember one day, kind of as a result of all this, I had just gone skiing, and so I was somewhat sunburned. And this kid came up to me and he said something like, he slapped me on the face, and he said, "I bet that hurts." Or he said something like, "Does that hurt?" Talking about sunburn. And I said, "Well, it didn't, but it does now." I kind of, again, he just made a joke out of it, and he laughed. And that changed, it's like, well, you're being stupid. I made light of it, made some humor. It changed things. And after that, he didn't really bother me after, I almost became, we shared different things we liked. He actually liked me what kind of music I liked. We talked about the Doors back then. Anyway, um, so that's a good way to defend yourself. Use some humor. Don't get so offended about just names and slight. Slap on the face is not nice, but um, use some humor. Like someone comes up to you, your mom's really fat. I mean, you can say something like, "Well, yeah, and she's got a mustache too." I don't know if you noticed. I mean, just try to use some humor. I mean, especially one of the times I hated the most was when a teacher had a substitute. And one of the things that always seemed to happen, they go through the roll call and they always mispronounce our last name. Our last name is spelled Koch, a German name. It's supposed to be said Koch. But when my grandparents came over, they changed it to Coach to be much easier. And the substitutes would always say something like, "Is Chris Koch here?" And everybody in high school loved that. And there's a humorous way to respond to that. You could say, I'm known as, whatever. You could play off of that. Anyway, but if it's a higher level, if you're experiencing like a level 4 where it's life-threatening, you have to make dramatic steps to correct what's going on. I mean, if something like that is happening, you need to do dramatic things, changing schools, moving in with grandparents, talking about I've got to get some help. I've got to, homeschooling. If parents aren't able to or unwilling, then you've got to make some changes. You've got to get help. You've got to move. You've got to do something very drastic. A lot of times, well, parents always say, "Oh, you got to talk to us. You got to talk to the teachers. You've got to talk." And I know what you're thinking. Most of the time, you think, "Well, I can't talk to teachers. I can't talk to parents. It'll just make it worse. My parents will come in and sit me with me in school and just embarrass me. I can't do it." Well, the last, and we just barely found out about this. My son I was telling you about, he's 16. He's in high school, and he had been being bullied with by 3 kids in one of his classes, and it was almost every single day. And like I say, we didn't hear about this until it got pretty bad. And the thing, and we kept telling him, and what I wanted to do was probably something that would have embarrassed him. And we got into class and done something, or at least call the principal and get him, or vice principal and get him involved. But I can't, he has to learn, that's a life skill to learn how to deal with difficult people. This won't be the last time he runs into 3 people who are very difficult. You might have bosses that know how to push your buttons, and you have to know how to handle them. So, thank goodness, what ended up happening is one of his friends at school, these 3 guys were bullying, I guess not just him, but a few other people. His friend finally said, I've had enough. Can't deal with this anymore. Come with me to the principal's office and let's talk about it. And so he did. And things changed. He changed the schedule. They made things better. I don't know if he even sees these guys anymore, but it helped resolve things. So you can be that friend that helps your other friends get the help they need. Um, so one of the hardest parts about bullying, I think, besides the actual um, act of being bullied, is the effects it has on you. You know, being bullied's like someone throws a huge rock in a pond and those ripples just kind of go out from that center point, and it affects everybody that this victim knows. So what happens most of the time when you're bullied? What do you do? Well, you come home and you yell at your parents, you kick the dog, maybe beat up the walls, uh, you do something negative. So the hardest thing you have to learn to do is to let that ripple end with you. So it's almost like they throw that rock instead of being liquid water, it's like a frozen pond. It doesn't make any ripples. You come home, you talk to your parents, you don't suffer in silence. You talk to somebody, and if it's not your parents, talk to a friend, neighbor, someone. You take that new found energy and turn it into self-improvement. You go to the gym, you go for a run, you get a punching bag, you go on a bike ride, you do 1,000 push-ups. You use that energy for positive things. Because I know a few times my son came home, he was really upset and he took it out on us. It's not your parents' fault, but they need to know so they can help you. It will be better. They can help. Talking about difficult things in life, one of the movies that I've really enjoyed is the movie on King Arthur. It just came out a few years ago, and his story of how he grew up. His birthright was to be a king, and he had his parents were killed by the king's brother, so his uncle, and he ended up growing up in a brothel, meaning a place where prostitutes live. And I want to show you this.
Wanted to know what gave me such drive. It was you. You put me in that brothel. You caught me on the streets. I am here now because of you. You created me. And for that, I bless you. You make sense of the devil.
Oh, very powerful scene there. If you noticed, I don't know if you got all of the dialogue, but very, very interesting. He defeated his enemy, that demon in his life. And so the dialogue goes, "You wanted to know what gave me such drive. It was you. You put me in that brothel. You cut me on the streets. I am here now because of you. You created me. And for that, I bless you. You make sense of the devil." In other words, he was, his life was like he was the character of the devil, the attributes of someone very evil. So instead of running from those difficulties he had in his life, he gave thanks to his uncle for those challenges he put him through. He would have been a much different person if he had grown up in the king's court, and the hardest decision he had to make in a day was, what clothes should I wear with my crown today? So, what should you say in your mind when you're facing a very difficult situation and being bullied or things like that? You should say, what a great opportunity for me to show that person who I am. He didn't run from difficult things. He ran toward and forward, perpetual motion forward. Difficult times and situations reveal people for who they are. They're exceptional. They stand apart from the crowd. Do you know why you were born at this time in this environment? Because the world needs you to rise up, defend the truth, and out of the ashes of your life, become who God wants you to be. Become hardened still. If someone says something that you know that's not right, stand up for the truth, even though you know you'll be punished for doing it. You are not a victim. You will not be defeated. You are strong. You can conquer anything in this world with God's help. You have everything you need to be victorious. Use the sword God has given you and be the sword God wants you to be.